Your environment dictates your performance. It isn't just about who you spend your time with, it's about where you spend your time. I've really experienced firsthand the power of this idea. It helped me to push myself out of my comfort zone, to change the way that I thought about business, and more importantly, change the way I thought about myself. It's very easy to get into quite a negative mindset if you just work from the same place all the time and you see the same people. I really believe that can stifle your creativity and it can stifle the growth of your business. I'm not suggesting the answer to this is to travel the world. Not everybody has the resources to do that. And so I think the answer is hey, it's Matt Essam here. Welcome to another episode of the Creative Courage podcast. If you're a new listener, this podcast is all about giving you the courage to build a creative business that gives you freedom, that gives you fulfillment, and financial security. Today, I want to talk to you about a fundamental concept that I believe will dictate the kind of creative business that you run. This is a concept that I first learned from one of my mentors many years ago. And at the time, I didn't really know what it meant. It was kind of just like a catchphrase or a saying that he used to say over and over again. Today, almost a decade on, it's one of the key principles. It's one of the key ideas that I use to continually grow my business in a way that aligns with my values, but also that actually allows me to be the kind of best version of myself, the most creative version of myself. So the high level principle I learned from one of my mentors, Daniel Priestley, and he took this principle and made it very succinct into a saying. And the saying is, your environment dictates your performance. Your environment dictates your performance. And as I said, when I first heard that, I didn't really know what it meant. It sounded like a cool catchphrase. But as the years have gone by, I've really experienced firsthand the power of this saying or this idea. The first time I experienced it was when I put myself in a room and in a community with other people who were growing and building businesses, other entrepreneurs, and they were from lots of different fields. I was surrounded by accountants, I was surrounded by life coaches, personal trainers, and it really, really helped me to push myself out of my comfort zone, to change the way that I thought about business, and more importantly, change the way I thought about myself and what was possible for me. So that was the kind of first experience I had of changing my environment, changing who I was around, and seeing the direct impact it had on my business. And I really believe that being in that environment, knowing those people, surrounding myself with those people, was the key thing that got me to my first six figures in business. Now, since then, I've really thought about this principle and I actively try and curate, I suppose, who I spend my time with. And I was lucky enough a couple of weeks ago to go skiing and be around these people, be around these incredible entrepreneurs. I know I shared some key insights and some takeaways from that on one of my podcast episodes. So if you haven't heard that, go back and take a listen to it. So I proactively do that. The other thing about environment is it isn't just about who you spend your time with, it's about where you spend your time. Now, I'm recording this episode in New Zealand. I'm over here visiting some family. And ever since I started my business, even when I had my creative agency, I was always a big advocate of changing my environment as much as possible. Now, if you know anything about my story, I spent the first 4 years of my agency basically trying to live the 4-hour work week, trying to work from anywhere in the world, trying to outsource my business. And there was good stuff and bad stuff with that. I won't go into the full story now. But travel has always been a big part of my life and the way that I run my business. It's probably because when I was growing up, my mum was actually a travel agent. And so we used to go on some pretty cool holidays. We used to explore the world. And it wasn't unusual for me to go to different countries and travel to different places during my school holidays. So I was very much used to my environment changing quite regularly. Now, coming back to business and how this changes. Here in New Zealand right now, today, it's actually raining and it's overcast and it's been raining for the past couple of days. Now, one of the reasons that I left the UK recently was because it was rainy all the time and grey and overcast. But when I came to New Zealand, it felt really good and really nice. And the reason for that is because I've spent the past 6 months living in Dubai, where pretty much every day I get up and there's blue sky, right? So it made me realize that even an environment where everything feels kind of perfect, like you wake up and there's perfect day, there's blue sky, etc., that can also create stagnation, because it's the monotony, it's getting used to the same thing every day that then kind of puts ourselves in our comfort zone. It makes our brain go onto autopilot and ultimately stifles our creativity. And I would even go as far as to say limits the growth for our business and maybe even for ourselves personally. Now, I'm not suggesting the answer to this is to travel the world. I know a few things. Number one, not everybody has the resources to do that. Number two, people are in different situations to me. I don't have a family. I don't have young kids. It's very difficult to travel. I literally witness and see families like when I'm traveling, and I just think, oh my God, that must be so stressful, like trying to travel with young kids. So I know that's not always practical, but there are always things you can do on a daily basis to change your environment. And it doesn't have to be every day, but I would suggest it's at least a couple of times a week. And I would suggest, and my hope from you listening to this episode, is that you just become conscious of where you are spending your time. Now, I don't know you, so I don't know what you're like. But what I do know, having coached literally hundreds of creatives over the past 10 years and being creative myself, what I do know is that it's very easy to get into quite a negative mindset, or to kind of stagnate or feel a bit stagnated if you just work from the same place all the time and you see the same people. So like if I have a day or maybe a couple of days where I'm like working from home, I've got a lot of calls, I'm on Zoom a lot, I'm interacting with other people, but my physical environment is exactly the same. And I know that by the end of that week, I can get into more negative ways of thinking, and I can make different decisions in my business as a result of having those few days back to back at home, just in the exact same environment. It's easy not to really go anywhere or go out. Now, if you live in a country, if you live maybe somewhere in Europe, and right now it's winter, and you look out the window and it's kind of gray and it's kind of rainy, and you just think like, oh, I could go down the road and work from the cafe, but actually it's quite nice here, it's quite comfortable. Or even if you go into an office and you're kind of there every day, you're under fluorescent lights, and you get into that rhythm and that routine of just doing the same thing day in, day out, I really believe that can stifle your creativity and it can stifle the growth of your business. And so I think the answer are just small, simple things. Changing your environment, going to a new cafe, maybe that you've never been to before, or just having like 3 or 4 different spots that you know you can go to work from, where you're going to just change your environment slightly. Finding places where you know people hang out that are maybe playing at a higher level than you, or that are creative in ways that inspire you, or even really simple. Like when I used to live in Leeds, I would have a day with my friend Greg, or even half a day, and we would decide like, this is our creative inspiration day. And we'd go and work from, there was like a museum that had this really cool cafe, big kind of floor to ceiling windows. It was very ornate. There was a piano in there and things like that. So we'd go and work from there. And then we'd spend a bit of time in the afternoon just like going around and kind of looking at the museum, looking at things for creative inspiration. And sometimes that can feel a little bit indulgent. It can feel a little bit self-indulgent and be like, why am I sitting here looking at these paintings when, you know, I've got client deadlines, I need to win some new business, all of this stuff. But it's so easy to get sucked into that and actually lose your edge, lose the thing that makes you appealing to that client, lose the thing that is going to help you with that new creative idea, that one spark that maybe transforms that campaign you're working on or that design you're working on. And so I think it's really important to be conscious of this and to make a concerted effort to change your environment consistently somehow. And like I said, it doesn't have to be every day, but maybe once a week or twice a week, and at least once a month going somewhere or doing something that is slightly out of the norm. And if you have got young kids and you know your situation is a little bit restricted, it can be really simple things, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Even just kind of getting away and like maybe going to an Airbnb and changing the house you live in or the environment you live in just for a weekend or a long week or something like that. Really, really important. So that's kind of my big message from today. It's stealing an idea that I got taught many years ago that I've seen play out in my business, that I've seen play out in other people's businesses. And I know the importance of that. So if you consistently work from home, or you go to an office, or you go to a co-working space, or wherever it is, make a concerted effort this week. Maybe like listening to this episode, write down some places where you could go and change that environment, where you could work from. Is it a coffee shop? Could you literally like get the train into your nearest city and just try working from a co-working space for the day? We work with agencies that have teams of 7, 8, 10, 12 people, but they're all remote. And so they're working from their home basically. And they've got this big team that they manage, but they're fully remote. We've also got clients that have their own offices, some incredible offices, and it's great and it's creative, but it's the same thing every single day. So like, where could you take your team? Like, what could you do with your team once a week? Could you go for a lunch with them or something and go to a different place? Could you just like randomly go out for a walk on a Tuesday afternoon or something? Like, what are you doing to change your environment and change your team's environment on a regular basis to keep that creative spark flowing, to create that environment that is going to push you in your business, and it's going to help you personally to change your perspective on the world? Because ultimately that's what it's about, right? It's about changing your thinking, changing your perspective, seeing new ways of thinking, getting inspired, challenging the way that you think. These are all things that we have to do if we want to continue to grow creatively, but also from a business and a personal point of view. I hope you found this little episode, this solo episode, valuable. If you did, if you're a new listener and you like this episode, go and check out some of the others. Hit the subscribe button, share it with a friend. We release an episode every single week, and it's all based around how to grow a creative business, a creative studio, and the link to courage, what things you have to do in a courageous way in order to grow that business. Please hit subscribe, share it with a friend, and I will see you again next week. Thank you for listening.